Well, it happened. It actually happened. Took one look at my phone this morning, checked out the weather app, and it is less than 50 degrees out. Yes, summer really is starting to come to a close. And all I can say is, please don't. I don't want this nice weather to end. I mean, you know what it is? I think it's Dunkin' Donuts' fault for bringing back pumpkin spice too early. You've upset the natural order. What are you doing? Don't get me wrong, I love pumpkin spice. You know, it definitely pleases my inner white girl that pumpkin spice is back. But I don't want it that soon. Like, good things come to those who wait. You've disturbed the natural order of things. It's getting colder faster. What next? We're gonna have Valentine's Day stuff after Thanksgiving? That makes no sense. What are you doing? No. That makes me rather upset. Well, not really upset. I'm trying to build some comedy here, folks. And what do you, I mean, come on. I just feel so good. Honestly, I feel really good. I mean, you know what it is? Ever since, like, after every single time I do a State of My Being address, I always feel good afterwards. Like, I don't feel as, like, yeah, like, before I do it, I don't feel as if I, like, have, like, a burden or something like, I'm trying, like, I know it sort of feels as if, like, a weight's been lifted off my shoulders, but, like, before I do it, it doesn't really feel that way, but only after I do the State of My Being address, then it feels as if a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So, I'm like, wow, I really had a lot to unload there. I mean, yesterday's video was almost a half hour, so I guess it sort of only makes sense that, you know, I definitely had a lot to say, which, you know, by all accounts I do. So, I mentioned this the other day, and I think I was going to start doing, I mentioned I was going to maybe consider doing this sort of, like, series of videos. I don't know necessarily if I'll be able to keep doing it that often, because I would like to do more than one video a day getting up to. I mean, technically I could, I just get so busy during the day. So, for now, I'll just use today as sort of an intro into this sort of series of videos that I would like to do. And the good news is there's actually, you know, quite a few of them. And the thing is, though, I'm trying to come up with a name for it. Basically, the premise of these videos is I'm going to talk about people that, you know, whose stuff that I watched, or, you know, definitely, you know, I remember, like, watching growing up, or maybe possibly has an impact today, you know, stuff like that. And when I talked about Invader Zim Enter the Florpus, I mentioned, or actually the day before I talked about my thoughts on Enter the Florpus, I talked about how Invader Zim and Fairly Odd Parents premiered on Nickelodeon on that same weekend. And I remember how the Fairly Odd Parents, technically, I mean, don't get me wrong, both Invader Zim and the Fairly Odd Parents at the time were great. And by all accounts, you know, they still are. They still have plenty of lasting power, even though Fairly Odd Parents kind of ended on a whimper. But it definitely means that, you know, they were good then, and technically they're good now. So, when Fairly Odd Parents first premiered, they were really promoting this guy named Butch Hartman. Yeah, Butch Hartman's going to be the guy I'm talking about, in case you couldn't figure that out. And he had talked about, you know, some of his, you know, credentials, you know, working on animation in the past, you know, because he did work a lot with, you know, Hanna-Barbera cartoons on, you know, Cartoon Network. And he helped create shows like Dexter's Laboratory and Johnny Bravo. And fun fact, there's actually an old cartoon where he worked with Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy fame called Zoomates. It was actually really cool because, like, the Cartoon Network and eventually Nickelodeon would have shows called What a Cartoon, The What a Cartoon Show, and Oh Yeah Cartoons. It was basically a platform for artists and creators to come up with like a pilot, and they show it on air, and if the network liked it, they would order more episodes and stuff. And the one that Butch Hartman and Seth MacFarlane worked on was something called Zoomates, which I actually remember watching a couple times because obviously the What a Cartoon Show had reruns. And it was basically like a polar bear, an alligator, an ostrich, and they have to live in an apartment. Which, the animation, like, the humor was definitely more like Seth MacFarlane, a little bit on the dry side, but the animation style was Butch Hartman. And some of the humor was also Butch Hartman as well. I mean, they were both really good. Seth MacFarlane and Butch Hartman. I mean, if you know who Seth MacFarlane is, if you watch Family Guy, you know exactly how he ended up, which I will probably talk about Seth MacFarlane one day, but not now. So Butch Hartman eventually gets a show called Fairly Odd Parents, which did premiere on Oh Yeah Cartoons on Nickelodeon. And, I remember watching it, and, I mean, if you watch the original pilot of Fairly Odd Parents to what the show looks like now, it's wildly different looking, but, that tends to happen when, you're trying to make a, good product. It's going to look vastly different from what it was before. So, with that said, Fairly Odd Parents first premiered, and I did mention this the other day, but when Invader Zim and Fairly Odd Parents first premiered, at first, they each had, new episodes, which is great. But Fairly Odd Parents only had, like, 6 episodes, like, produced. Meaning, like, for an entire year, you would just watch reruns of those 6 episodes before new ones were made. Which is one of the reasons why Invader Zim also, boosted in popularity. Because, you have Fairly Odd Parents having, reruns of these shows. Whereas, Invader Zim, you have, new episodes more frequently. So, that was getting that. But eventually, when Fairly Odd Parents did get more episodes, and as SpongeBob became more and more of a juggernaut, Invader Zim kind of did fall to the wayside a little bit. But, that also tends to happen. So, Fairly Odd Parents comes out with more episodes. The vast majority of them are all hits. And so Nickelodeon wants Butch Hartman to create, another show. And don't worry, I know I'm going to be doing this. I'm actually going to be doing this in a different order. Because a couple of years ago, around the early to mid 2010s, he came up with a show called Tough Puppy, which featured iCarly star Jerry Trainer as the titular character. And actually, one thing I need to mention about all of Butch Hartman's shows is, like, don't get me wrong, the starring cast is great. Tara Strong for Fairly Odd Parents, and Duran Norris and Greg Griffin for, all of his other shows. But the supporting cast he has for all these shows are great, too. Like, Jay Leno as the Crimson Chin. I mentioned that. Norm Macdonald as Norm the Genie. That was meant to... It was sort of plays in with his sarcastic humor. Like, yeah, even Frankie Muniz played one of Timmy Turner's friends, Chester McBadbat. Not to mention you have voiceover actors, alumni like Rob Paulson and Jeff Bennett, helping out with, what he does, which, again, it's Rob Paulson and Jeff Bennett. They're both awesome. And now we get to... the show I wanted to save for last because, actually I didn't really talk about Tough Puppy yet, did I? Basically, Tough Puppy is in a world of anthropomorphic creatures. Dudley Puppy is an agent for a crime syndicate called crime fighting organization called Tough. And for the life of me, I cannot remember what it means. Sorry, I forgot. But yeah, that was the premise. And I'm trying to stall too much. Let's get into easily Butch Hartman's best show, and everyone all agrees this is true. I'm talking about Danny Phantom. I loved that show. Like, I mean, it definitely had a lot of Butch Hartman's, humor and wit. Some of his mannerisms, like using the same joke, about 3 times max, stuff like that. Because that's actually, if you watch a lot of Butch Hartman's cartoons, then I think you probably notice this too. He brings up a gag, and, he uses the joke at least 3 times. At least. And, I mean, I know comedy tends to work in threes, so I guess that's where the logic comes from. But it's like, I think that was the first time, like, seriously, when I think about it, Butch Hartman's cartoons were, like, the first instance of, like, paying attention to, like, what a creator's, style is, I guess. Not just in terms of, hand-drawn animation, but in terms of, storytelling, character development, humor, stuff like that. Those elements that make up, a lot of entertainment lately. That's not, reading, obviously. Because, reading is just looking at a book, TV is just, I'm getting sidetracked, I'm sorry. So, darn it, where was I? Oh, goodness me. So, Danny Phantom, his best show by far. Everyone loves it, It features a kid who can turn into a ghost, that can fight other ghosts. It had lots of elements of sci-fi and horror. Oh, horror, I say horror, I mean, nothing was, like, legitimately nightmare-inducing or scary, but, it sort of just fall underneath that, genre of horror. And it was great. And, again, there's a lot of really great characters. I love Danny Phantom. I honestly felt like, I was like that hopeless nerd who tried to, like, do great, but for all reasons couldn't. And, I mean, I wish I had. Seriously, he had, like, all the powers of a ghost. He can turn invisible, intangible. That means, for those of you who don't know, intangibility means, like, firstly, punch you would, like, go, like, right through you. It will, no pain at all. He can fire, like, ghost beams. Oh, man, that show was awesome. He could fly. Oh, man, that was, like, seriously, I think growing up and watching Danny Phantom, like, he was the superhero I think I wanted to, like, be the most, just because not only were his superpowers cool, but in real life, they're also really convenient. And it was awesome. Although, looking back on it, the one biggest missed opportunity that I think Danny Phantom didn't do, actually Nickelodeon as a whole didn't do, but then again, Nickelodeon is known for making bad decisions in the past, is near the time Danny Phantom was ending, another show on Nickelodeon was premiering called El Tigre, The Adventures of Manny Rivera, which featured a boy who could also transform into a superhero. You see where this is going? Danny, Manny. The crossover would practically write itself. Come on. I could just picture how it would, like, go now. The fight scenes would be awesome. Get, like, a good team of talented writers who are also fans, because, by fans, for the fans. Obviously you get the blessing of Butch Hartman, and for the life of me, I can't remember who created El Tigre, I'm sorry. But yeah, like, get them both together. Like, have them, well, first they would sort of, fight each other, because, that's what you do in a crossover. You sort of have, like, an internal conflict between the two, have them make up, then fight, like, the inevitable big bad at the very end, is what essentially would happen. I mean, it's been tried a lot, and obviously it definitely has its share of failures, but it's definitely had more successes. And again, get the blessing of both the creators of Danny Phantom and El Tigre, obviously Butch Hartman. Hold on a second. I'm going to see who, I'm going to look up who made El Tigre. Hold on a second. Here you go. El Tigre, The Adventures of Manny Rivera. Who made this show? Created by George R. Gutierrez and Sandra Iquinwa. Okay. So, yeah, get some. Actually, I remember watching promos for LTU that the creators are actually married. So yeah, get the get George R. Gutierrez and Sandra Iquinwa and Butch Hartman, have them like make a crossover. Danny and Manny, make it happen. Actually, get XJ9. Get My Life as a Teenager. Oh, Danny, Manny, and Jenny. Well, it almost works. Someone would find a way to make it work. I know it would. It would happen. But again, that's just the thing. If there's one thing about Butch Hartman's cartoons, and he actually has made a crossover special with like all of his cartoons. Actually, one last thing before I go. Butch Hartman did make a show called Bunsen is a Beast, which I heard it got like mixed reviews, so I wouldn't know. And again, Butch Hartman did like a crossover like all of those shows. But that was always a thing, because like back when Jimmy Neutron was on Nickelodeon, there was like the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour trilogy. That was really cool. But again, like I always wanted to see like Danny Phantom, Manny Rivera as El Tigre, those two fighting together. That would have been awesome. It totally would have worked. The crossover practically would have written itself. Again, get a good team of writers, animators, all that stuff I just mentioned. Like, someone find a way to make that happen. And yeah. So that was always a really cool thing about Butch Hartman's cartoons as well. Like, they always made you think of like what scenarios could possibly happen next. And that's awesome. So yeah. And before I end, I just want to say, like, if I ever was like a writer that made like, books, I wouldn't want those books to be made into, movies. I would actually want them to be made into an animated series. And Butch Hartman is definitely one of my top choices to have as the animation director. So, thank you, Butch Hartman. I mean, there are plenty of others there are plenty of other choices I have, near the top of my list that, I would want, but Butch Hartman is one of them. So, thank you, Mr. Hartman, for being awesome, for providing a lot of, not just my childhood, but a lot of other people's childhoods as well. And, I know that, you're no longer, like, working at Nickelodeon, I believe, but whatever you're doing, I hope that your endeavors are great. I hope that you're spending time with, your loved ones, all that stuff. I hope you are doing well. So, that is awesome. And you are awesome. So, well, pretty much everyone here is awesome. Provided that you're watching. You see me, I can't see you. So, yeah. And I am going to point out the elephant in the room, or the bear in the room. I totally forgot to put this guy in the video yesterday, which I'm very sorry. Okay, we're good. We're okay now. Everything is square. He's okay. He's okay! So, like, favorite, share, hit that subscribe button, follow me on the social media platforms, turn on notifications on YouTube. I'm very humbled I made this video for all of you guys who watch and enjoy for today. I'm hoping you have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. And remember, for any of you guys who want to talk with you, I'm always going to be here, to lend ear, and I'll always have your back. Take care, and make good choices. Huh. It is Saturday, isn't it? I guess it sort of does make sense that I am talking about a guy who made, essentially Saturday morning cartoons. So, you know what? In honor of Butch Hartman, how about I end off this video with a little bit of Butch Hartman music. Shall I?
He was just 14 when his parents built a very strange machine designed to view a world unseen. When it didn't write words, his folks they just quit, and Danny took a look inside of it. There was a great big flash, everything just changed. His molecules got all rearranged. When he first woke up, he realized lines. He had snow white hair and glowing green eyes. He walked through walls to appear at five. He was much more unique than the other guy, and it was then that he knew what he had to do. He had to stop all the girls that were coming through. He's here to fight for me and you.
I had to do that. See ya.